Join Us in France, episode 82. Hello, I'm Annie, and I have an exciting episode for you today. A trip report with Matt, who spent 3.5 weeks in France with his wife and 2 young daughters. And he tells us all about their adventures in this episode as well as next one. Today we hear about things went as they landed in Paris on the day of the taxi strike and the mayhem that was going on that day. They went to the Loire Valley and then to the Dordogne. Matt had such a good time both planning and executing his trip to France that he reached out to me to let me know that he might like to share it with the Join Us in France community. And that was very generous of him. Thank you very much. It was really fun to talk to you because he did a lot and he learned a lot and he wants to share with all of us. So that's wonderful. If you would also like to share your French adventures with your fellow listeners, send me an email and we'll talk it over. This week, I also want to thank listeners who made their purchases on Amazon.com via Join Us in France and allowed us to make a small commission to pay for bandwidth for the show. Maureen even emailed me to make sure she was doing it right, which was really nice. What I suggested to her, and I suggest to you as well, is to create a shortcut to Amazon through Join Us, and then put that on your desktop and use that shortcut every time you need to get something from Amazon. And that way, you're sure we'll always get the credit. I'll put instructions on how to do that on joinusinfrance.com/Amazon. So, without further ado, let's get to Matt's trip report for his summer 2015 vacation to France with his lovely wife and kids.
Hi, Annie.
How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. I think it's going to be fascinating to hear about your long vacation to France. Tell us a little bit about your family and, what motivated you to come to France and take a long vacation like this.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's really exciting to talk about this trip that we spent a lot of time planning and really enjoyed. And Join Us in France podcast contributed a lot to kind of our perspective going into the trip and some of the planning. And,
that's good to know.
It's very helpful.
That's good to know.
And I remember we live just outside of Boston, and we had a really epic winter where there was many feet of snow. And I remember listening to several Join Us in France podcasts while shoveling. So,
oh dear,
helped pass the time.
Yeah, I have some good friends. Elise and I actually have a good friend who lives near Boston, and that was her first winter back in Massachusetts after living in France for 10 years or something. She hated it. She was like, "Oh no, I'm gonna die."
Yeah, it was the worst winter I've ever experienced.
Oh dear. Okay, well, you survived. That's good.
We survived. Yeah. So anyway,
go ahead.
Myself and my wife Erica and our 2 daughters, Alice and Nora, went on this trip to France for about 3.5 weeks this summer. And
your daughters are 5 and 9.
Correct. Yeah, Alice is 9 and Nora is 5. And my wife and I are in our late 30s. And prior to having children, about 10 years ago, we did do some traveling in Europe to several different countries, including France. And we liked it a lot. But since we then had kids, we kind of just kept all of our travel to the New England, New York area.
Yeah.
So for a while now, we've kind of been looking forward to doing something in going to Europe with the kids and trying to figure out, how that would be different from what we had done in the past, which was really, go to a place for 1 or 2 days and take the train and skip around a bit and see lots of things. And so we were thinking about, well, how do we want to do this with the kids and how is it going to be different?
Yeah. And how was it different?
Well, first of all, we decided we wanted to make it a longer trip. Yep. So because we've talked to other people who say, it takes a while for the kids to get acclimated to the jet lag. And of course, it costs more to buy 4 tickets than 2. Certainly. So you figure you get more for your money if you stay longer, basically.
Yeah.
So we were thinking about a 3-week trip would be good. It would kind of fit. We'd be able to get to a place and settle in and kind of enjoy being together as a family for a longer stretch of time. So we said, okay, let's take a longer trip. And we wanted to do it this summer, which kind of coincided with not having to pay for daycare and things like that anymore because my 5-year-old's older.
Yeah.
And we wanted to go right after school was over at the end of June and the beginning of July because of other summer commitments. So we kind of blocked off those 3 weeks and said, all right, let's figure out where we want to go and what we want to do in those 3 weeks. And that kind of kicked off the planning. Excellent.
Well, and at that time, airplane tickets are a little bit cheaper sometimes by a little bit, not that much, but it's often, you often have more choice of what day you travel and all of that.
Yeah, we did. And we found that a lot of the Jeets or the house rentals were just getting into the peak season. So we could get a little bit of a discount there too and a lot more availability. So that's good. So from there, we kind of started talking about where do we want to go. And we chose France for a number of reasons. The first one seeming that it seems like it's really family-friendly place. And that was kind of our impression going in. And it was definitely the case after we went there. And we were really, really happy about how accommodating it is for people with children. And we, having been in France for a little bit in previous trips, we had kind of gotten to see kind of the diversity of the regions. Like we had been to the Alps for a couple of days and we had been to Provence for a couple of days. And we saw that the regions, Provence, Alps, Dordogne, Loire, etc., were really unique and we really enjoyed our time there. And we felt that a trip within France, we could experience a lot of diversity and interesting things. Oh,
sure, yeah. It's very different. North to south in France is already different. And then you go east and it's again different. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of excited us. And in addition to that, France is a little bit less expensive than some of its neighbors in terms of prices of rental cars and housing when you compare it to, say, Switzerland or England or Italy. Yeah. And it seems like it had a more predictable climate as well.
Well, I don't know. This year. Woof.
Yeah. Well, that was my impression going in anyway. So that's kind of why we chose France. Yeah. And from there, we just kind of started planning what to do, where to see, and kind of coming up with a whole list of details.
So did you speak French before you came?
I would say not really, but I took maybe 3 or 4 years of French in high school. Well, this is a long time ago. And I find that, that's enough to kind of initiate a conversation and not be like embarrassed about speaking a foreign language, where I found that I tend to do, okay in my time that I'd spent in France earlier, as opposed to say Germany, where I just can't really say anything other than thank you and hello. So I felt like that kind of basic level of language gave us enough comfort that with this first trip with kids that we wouldn't be totally lost when trying to communicate with people, which was good. And another factor that kind of leads it onto that is that my 5-year-old daughter has a pretty severe allergy to eggs and nuts. So we wanted to make sure that we could communicate well enough to keep her safe.
Correct. Yeah.
In the event that we were in a situation where we had to figure out if the food was okay.
Did that make it difficult for you, or were people cooperating with you quite well on that?
It actually was fine. What we did was, it was funny. As we were prepping, I was, using Google Translate and things at home to just kind of get a feel for phrases that would be helpful. And it turns out I cannot pronounce the word for eggs to save my life.
Les œufs?
Like I say, is that how you say it?
Les œufs. You would say, my fille est allergique aux œufs.
Okay. Every time I try to say egg, I say it's a oof or off or oof. And just couldn't get it right.
It's so anyway, not a ooh sound.
Yeah. So I just couldn't do it.
Okay, yeah.
So we had these cards printed out, or we just made a document and then kind of printed it out and cut it up that just says exactly that in French. My daughter's allergic to these things, and please let us know if what we're ordering has this in it. And
sounds great.
That was very helpful because I would oftentimes engage with somebody and start to say my fee is allergic, and they would give me a weird look, and then I'd pull out the card and they'd read and go, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. And then they were everyone was completely accommodating.
Oh, that's great.
Which was great.
That's great.
Yeah. Now, that said, we didn't really go out to restaurants much at all for, many reasons. We preferred to stay in and cook on our own. But when we did, it was a great experience. Just people were just very accommodating.
Yeah. So you found everyday life in France to be fairly, you weren't too startled by anything?
No, not particularly. I thought it was just really nice, actually. It was pretty relaxed. I mean, we did go to places that were, pretty were set up with touristy things to do, which was great. But it didn't feel overwhelming anywhere. And part of that was because we arrived, in June, where French schools were still in session. So we really didn't see many tourists, at least until we got to Provence. And
and then boom.
Yeah, not a little bit, but not even that overwhelming. I'd say overall, the amount of kind of personal space we had and like lack.
Oh, that's good.
And it just came off feeling very relaxing and it was great. And I thought driving was fantastic. Compared to Boston, it was like a vacation.
Well, yeah. That's right. Well, and you decided to skip Paris completely.
That's right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So my wife and I had been to Paris twice, I think for a total of like maybe 5 nights over the course of 2 different trips. One in 1999, so that was a long time ago, and then again in 2005. So we had seen it, and we just felt that given the 3 weeks that turned into 3.5 weeks that we had, our family as a whole would enjoy seeing the different regions and spending more time in outside of a big city. And that a lot of that has to do with our time that we've spent, visiting New York City and having the kids just not really be that engaged in big city type things. So we said, we'll skip it. I'm sure there'll be another opportunity, or hopefully there'll be another opportunity in the future for them to see it.
I think, as a parent, my daughter's older, but I would tend to agree. Young kids need more, physical activities, engaging things. Looking at paintings and buildings does not do very much for them typically, and they tend to like, let's go do a river trip or let's go do a whatever it is. Although there are some good activities for kids in Paris, but most of the best ones are for kids who speak French. So it's a bit limiting when your kids don't speak French already. So I think you made the right call for the ages of your daughters.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it worked out for us, and then it was just nice to have accommodations too, where we could just kind of chill out and they could go on a swing set or something, which we wouldn't have had in Paris.
Correct. Well, there are some, but yeah. So another thing that surprised me is that you landed at Charles de Gaulle, CDG, but then you didn't rent your car at CDG. You took the train, the high-speed train to Tours. Why did you decide to not rent from Paris?
Well, I kind of went back and forth about this, and it's kind of at first I had rented the car out of Paris, and I said, well, it's going to be, the flight arrived at 6 a.m.
Right.
In theory, it was 8, but our flight was going to arrive at 6 a.m., and then I looked at Google Maps and looked at the traffic. I figured, okay, it's going to take us an hour to get our bags, and then we'll get to the rental car about 7:30. What is that going to look like?
Yeah.
And it looked horrendous, to be honest, to get to, the Amboise area from Charles de Gaulle, which is all the way in the northeast portion of the general area of Paris. It looked awful. Yeah. And I said, I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah.
With kids who have never really flown before and maybe super jet lagged.
Although that's just a 6-hour jet lag.
Yeah. It turned out not to be that big.
Yeah, it's not that bad,
deal,
really.
Yeah, but I didn't really know. So we said, let's just spend a little extra money and take the train to Tours, where we can rent a car. And I should note that I only drive automatic, so it was kind of like I could only rent a car from a place that has automatics. And when I found out that the Tours TGV station you could get it automatic from, I said, okay, let's just do that. It sounds like it would take some stress out of the day.
Yeah.
As it turns out,
that's where I was going next.
So as it turns out, our flight was delayed in Iceland by about 2 hours, And then when we arrived at Charles de Gaulle, it was a very slim chance that we were going to make the train reservations that we had.
2 hours late, no.
Arranged. Yeah. I was thinking, if everything goes right, fine, but chances are it's not going to happen. And then as soon as we stepped off the plane, it was clear that it was nuts. We didn't really know why, but everything was absolutely crazy. It took us forever to get our bags, and then it took us forever to get to the tram that we transfer terminals. And just as one example, it took us 40 minutes just to get through the line that gets to the elevator that takes you down to the next level to get onto the tram.
Oh goodness, it's not normally like that. It's not normally
like that. But I was like, what is going on? And it turns out what's going on was the taxi strike.
Oh yes, yeah. That's
So the train station was mobbed with people who were trying to get in the city because they couldn't take taxis or drive on the roads.
Right.
And so we missed our train, and we had to rebook for a later time, which is about. So the long and short of it is we spent about 4 extra hours in Charles de Gaulle before getting on the train. And of course,
go ahead, sir.
At the time, I'm beating myself up saying, "Oh, if we should have just rented the car from here." But as it turns out, we shouldn't have, because then we would have been stuck in the taxi strike traffic.
Exactly, because either way, that day was nasty because the taxis were blocking both private cars from coming and going, and of course public transportation was mobbed because everybody who would normally take a private car or a taxi wasn't able to do it. So either way, it was a bad day to arrive, but that happens.
Yeah. It happens. And, it was fine. Once we got on that train, I think vacation began and everyone was happy.
Was it difficult changing your train?
I had to buy new tickets.
You had to buy new tickets?
There's no refund or anything like that. So I just bought the next available train, and that's that.
Okay. I don't take the train, so I don't know, but I thought with the train you could, if you missed it, you could apply some credit towards another ticket, but maybe not. I really don't know. Elise takes the train a lot, but she's not here asking, so I can't. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We just chalked it up to, sometimes if things don't go right, and then you spend a little money and get out of it.
Happens.
So, it happens.
And that was probably not a very expensive train ticket anyway, because
no,
it was not very much.
Yeah, I think it was like 30 euros per person or something like that. Yeah. So not too bad.
So how was it driving once you got your car?
Driving was great.
Yeah?
I absolutely loved it. Compared to around here in Boston, it was just so nice to be on roads where people pretty much don't speed, and they don't pass on the right. They don't beep at you when they disagree with the choices you make on the road.
Yes.
Like if you are driving too slow, people don't, get all angry at you.
Yes. Yes. That's something that's startling to me, especially New York City. They honk at you.
Yeah. New York and Boston, pretty similar.
Yeah. They honk at you just because they would have done it differently. I'm like, well, dude.
Yes.
I'm ahead of you. Live with it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that drives me crazy about being around here. It's just if you do something that people don't agree with you, they'll let you know. But I just thought driving in France made a lot of sense, and the roundabouts or the rotaries were excellent, and it must have saved us hours of time overall in the whole trip by not having to stop at lights.
Yes. Yeah, those are wonderful things. Once you get used to them, I don't know why anybody does four-way stops. Especially four-way stops. Those things are evil. I drove in the U.S. this summer. I drove in Philadelphia and New York and New Jersey a little bit. Oh, it's so painful. all those four-way stops just kill me.
Yeah, I agree. And it's great. We had so for Christmas, my wife had found just a basic TomTom GPS with French maps on eBay and bought it. And that's a gift to us heading into the trip, and it was great. I mean, just set it for the next town we're going to, and pretty much stress-free driving the whole way. I mean, the speed limit on the highways are like 80 miles an hour or 130 kilometers per hour. And I could go 65 and just stay in the right lane, and everyone was cool with that.
Yeah. No, it's true. Now, I want to point out that I did an episode on driving in France. It's episode 16 of the show that is pretty popular because we explain a lot of things like that to put people at ease. But really, driving in France, if you're used to driving in a big city, it's going to be easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That episode was very helpful to us as well, because the only other places we'd driven in Europe were northern Italy, which is a little bit more chaotic. And
although it's calmed down,
Ireland.
It's really calmed down, even in Italy, because since we have speed traps now everywhere in Europe, even the Italians, they have to slow down, otherwise they lose their license. So it's getting much easier to drive in Europe overall, and in France in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so now let's get to the fun stuff. One of the first place you went is the Loire Valley, and you went to Chenonceau, and another place called Château du Clos-Lus, which I don't think I've been to. So why don't you tell us about those places?
Sure. So the Château Chenonceau, Chenonceau, is that?
Chenonceau,
how'd you pronounce it?
Yeah, you did fine.
Chenonceau, okay. Well, it was, in doing the research, it seemed like if we were going to spend a day in the Loire, we kind of identified that as the thing that we wanted to see the most. Yeah. It seemed like just a really, really pretty place, and we just wanted to see it, and a lot of Renaissance history with Catherine de Medici, her involvement in the palace or the chateau.
It has to be one of the most splendid chateaus in France. I mean, it's just
Yeah, it was amazing. I'm not one who typically likes to go to big palaces or things like that, but I was kind of blown away.
Right.
It was five star all the way.
Yeah, because part of the castle is over the river. And so you have these arches that go over the river, and you have the castle. So it's eye candy for sure.
Yeah, it was eye candy. It was a beautiful day too. It was like absolute perfect weather that day. The flowers were all in bloom.
Yeah.
Kids loved it. The history behind it was really interesting to read about.
Yeah.
So we had a picnic lunch there in the grounds. It was great.
So the kids didn't get too restless visiting the castles and stuff like that?
Not really. To skip ahead a little bit, most of the restlessness came in Provence, looking at Roman ruins type stuff. But in castles and things, no, they were fine.
Well, it was the beginning of vacation too, so.
Yeah, that's right. On this first day, they were all energized and ready to go, and it was cool.
Yeah. So Chenonceau, do they have anything special for children? I don't know if they do or not.
They have they have a little playground.
Okay.
Yeah, on the grounds, which is nice. And then they have kind of like a farm-ish area, though I didn't see too many animals. But and then they have kind of the vegetable garden, which the kids liked as well. Oh, and they have a maze too. Yeah, they have a small little maze.
They have a maze. Okay. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot to do. It was cool. And then when we went to eat lunch, they have lots of picnic tables like just outside the grounds, and it was really interesting because we were surrounded, and this became a theme for the first 2 weeks. Really, we were surrounded by field trips of
kids,
of students.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great because the field trip that we were sitting next to must have been probably high school age students, and they seemed to have set up like in an assembly line of like sandwich making, because they had a big bag that must have had like 200 baguettes in it, and some people were cutting open the baguettes, some people were stuffing the cheese in, some people were doing this, and we were like, this is awesome.
You got a glimpse of French life.
Yeah. And I should say, it seems like a small thing, but I've never been in a place that has so many picnic tables as France. Anywhere you go, there's just a field of picnic tables encouraging you to bring your own lunch, and not really tying you to the cafeteria or the gift shop or whatever to buy your food there. And it was just really nice.
That's right, because in France we have very few true fast restaurants. compared to America anyway. You know, you find a few fast foods and you find sandwich places. But at a place like Chenonceau, I don't know that they really even sell any food, do they? I mean,
I don't think so. Oh, maybe at a vending machine. Yeah, that's it.
And that's what French people do. They plan the day. They know that they're going to be spending lunch in this place or that place, and they bring what they need. And, you know, everybody's happy. And there's no need for Pizza Hut to set up a whatever, you know.
That's right. Yeah. It was nice because the pace of our days that we kind of settled into was, you know, get up around 8 or so and then be out the door relatively early, do something in the morning and have a picnic lunch for lunch. And then in the afternoon, either do something else or go swimming or something like that and be home by 5-ish, cook dinner, eat dinner, and then relax. And that was kind of the typical day.
Yeah.
And it just sets up really nicely when you can have, you could eat at the place that you're going to with food that you brought from the market or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's very good. That's very good. And Château du Clos Luce, what is that like?
So it was pretty neat. So that's essentially where Leonardo da Vinci spent his last days.
Oh, I have seen it. Okay. I didn't, I think of it as the Leonardo da Vinci. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, the house part, the main part of the house it's kind of like this is where he slept and this is where he worked, etc. Which was pretty cool. Not nearly as nice as Chenonceau.
Oh yeah, it's no Chenonceau for sure.
Yeah, but in the basement they had kind of an exhibit of all of Da Vinci's sketches and inventions and things, like kind of a video screen showing how things would work. And then in the grounds, they had a bunch of them kind of models made up. So it was fun for the kids. Like we can use, like they had a model of the Archimedes screw, so we can pump water up together and things like that.
Yeah, you could try a few things. And I thought it was really well done when we went. And actually, it's called Clos Luce. It's not Clos Luce, like I said before, because I thought it was a different place. But it's Château du Clos Luce. It's an A sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all the contraptions that you can look at and try are really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was fun. Altogether that was a pretty good day, and turned out to be, you know, one of the kids' favorite days of the whole trip right off the bat.
Yeah.
I should say one thing that we kind of planned to do in general, but really found out early on that it probably wasn't the best idea, was we planned to kind of just also go to just towns and walk around because the town would be nice, like Amboise, for example. Yeah. But we found that the kids really, if you talk about like getting restless, that's really where they would get restless and be like, okay, after we park the car and get out and walk around, they would just say like, okay, what are we doing here?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and they're right. So because adults are able to think, oh, we're just discovering, we're just taking it easy, looking around. But for a kid, they don't see the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I have a high school kid, and she's still, you know, when we go somewhere, she's like, well, what are we going to do here? I'm like, I don't know. I have never been here. We're just looking. But she wants to know, you know, she has this whole idea of this, we're just here to discover, doesn't really appeal to them as much. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So overall on this trip, you did a lot of your own cooking. And I'll put a list. You have written out a list of all the things that you did and even some of the meals you prepared. So it sounds like you ate really well.
Yes, we did. It was fantastic.
So what did you think of shopping at French grocery stores?
Well, I thought it was great. I thought once you get into the rhythm of like, you buy this, you can buy this stuff at the markets and you can buy this stuff at the supermarket and you can buy this stuff at the butcher. Once we got into a groove with that, it was really fun. At first it was a little bit, it took us a little while to kind of figure that stuff out. Like we would buy vegetables at like the supermarket and the next day there'd be a market like where we were going and we said, oh, those vegetables look
right. They look
really
better.
Awesome.
Yeah. Right.
But in general, we just really liked it. And especially going to the butcher and kind of just working with the butcher as best I could in my broken French about things to buy. That was really fun. And the open air markets, of course, are great.
That's funny. That's one of my husband's favorite things to do is to go to the butchers and just talk with a guy and see what's good and buy a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And then he comes home and And I'm like, why did you get that? And he's like, well, because the butcher told me it'd be good.
Yeah.
So, and usually it is. Yeah, he's right. So.
Yeah. And there were some things that across all regions of France during the time we were there that were just absolutely exceptional. Like bread was just always good. The baguettes were just amazing. Yeah. And obviously the cheese, which we can get into more later, was fantastic. Mm-hmm. But I think the seasonal things are the peaches, strawberries, the figs.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Yeah, we do get really good produce and obviously bread and cheese and yeah. We can eat. You can eat in France, huh?
Yeah, that's great. We started off the trip as a 1 baguette per day family and ended as a 2 baguette family.
Well, that's actually you did great because I think for a typical French family on the road with 2 adults and 2 kids, you'd probably eat in a day. You'd probably eat 3 or 4.
Oh wow!
Because you do sandwiches, right? So just a sandwich is a half a baguette. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it takes a. So you went pretty easy on the bread. We eat more bread than that in our family.
Yeah, it was great though. I was just so impressed that just the baseline quality and freshness of the bread was just great. Like I feel like the bread that we got at like highway rest stops was of similar quality to what we can get over here in the States, and like that was like the least impressive bread of the trip.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, even really basic bread in France is really good. Even the cheap stuff. I mean, French people are forever complaining about, the bread that they make at the grocery store is not so good and all that. But you know what? When you're used to American bread, it's fantastic. It's really good.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah. So
we were also pleased to see that heirloom tomatoes were all over the place and seemingly in season and not very expensive at all. And so we had a lot of those.
Yeah, we eat a lot of fruit and vegetables, and probably when you were here, you were probably eating stuff that came from Spain, because Spain produces a lot of North Africa and Spain produce a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we eat in June. Later in the season, French production comes in, but unless it's hothouse tomatoes, which most of the heirloom tomatoes are not. So.
Yeah. That's interesting. So even if I was at an outdoor market buying heirloom tomatoes, they could be from Spain?
Yes, they could be. They don't have to be, but they could be because the open air markets in France are so developed that they have some of the vendors just buy their stuff from distributors, just like they do at the grocery store. It's just that they're much pickier about what they get. The grocery store wants to sell everything quickly at a low price. The farmer's market, which many of these people are not farmers at all, they just want to get a more interesting variety, a more flavorful. They emphasize quality over quantity, and but they often get their stuff from large distribution, the same way grocery stores do. So,
no, it's interesting.
Yeah. But because every, even tiny town in France has what an American would call a farmer's market, but they're not. I mean, it's not just farmers going to farmers markets. It's an industry. It's a whole thing. There's even in the south of France where I live, there's even a major chain of a bakery chain that sets up that's their operation. They don't have store bakeries; they just sell on markets. But they have hundreds of vendors, and they're very good. So that's a different thing about French markets compared to American markets. So after that, it seems to me, if I read your description well, you went to the Dordogne, so you took a long car ride.
We did, yeah. It was about 4.5 hours or so. But it was fine. And stopped at some rest stops. Had our first experience at rest stops, which were interesting and very nice in general.
But you're on the freeways. You're paying, right?
On the freeways. Actually, it's not pay between the Loire and the Dordogne. I don't know why.
And Dordogne, well, I can tell you why. It's because those freeways are quite old. It's some of the very first ones. And the way freeways are built in France, I'm not sure how to say that. But there's a company, it's a concession in a way. There's a company that says, we'll do all the maintenance. So the government pays for the work. And there's a company that takes over and says, okay, we'll do all the maintenance for 20 years or however many years they want to do that. And then they get to keep some of the proceeds. And once that time is over, it reverts to public domain.
Oh, okay.
And so that's why some of the older freeways in France are free by now. They're truly freeways, but most of them are not. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were staying in Baynac, and we had rented a house there, kind of about a 10-minute walk up the hill into country-ish, farmland-ish land, about a 10-minute walk from Baynac, which was great for us.
Yeah.
It was, had a lot of space. It was set up for cooking and all of that. It was very comfortable. Had a beautiful deck that overlooked like a farmland type area.
Oh, very nice.
And the deck seemingly was always in the shade after 4:00, which was lovely to just hang out in.
Aha. That's really good. Yeah, because you were here on a pretty hot year.
Yeah, it was very hot.
Yeah.
And so when our time in the Loire, the weather was perfect, and we were watching the forecast. And when we arrived in the Dordogne, we met the people who were renting the house to us. That's kind of the first thing I brought up and said, it looks like it's going to be very, very hot this week. Like, do you have any suggestions? Because, of course, the place is not air conditioned. So they said, yeah, it'll be okay. They said, we've got fans in all the rooms. And what you can do is, you have these big shutters, open the shutters in the morning when it's cooler. And then when you go out, close all the windows and doors and shutters, and the house should stay relatively cool over the course of the day. And it did. Yep. And I was actually kind of amazed because I was skeptical. I'm like, oh, it's going to be 100 degrees. We're just going to not be able to sleep and all this stuff. But no, they were spot on. It worked.
Yep. It
was relatively comfortable.
Because French homes are built with, at the very least, cinder block. That's even the newer ones. And this type of cinder block plus the insulation, it makes for a pretty thick wall. And so if you protect your windows from the glare of the sun, from the sun hitting it directly, your house will stay fairly cool. Now, sometimes at night you do need a fan because it's going to be, unbearable. Otherwise, you'll just sweat in place, which doesn't make for a good rest. But yeah, most French houses, if you're careful about when you open and then keep it shut down the rest of the day, you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was. And we did other things too. Like they recommended a really awesome beach to go swim at in the Dordogne, which we did 3 or 4 times, I think, in the afternoon, which is really convenient. The town was, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's Vitrac, Vitrac.
Yep, Vitrac.
So if you go into the town, and then it's also the place where they rent canoes out of.
Aha.
So there's kind of a whole place where they're renting the canoes, and then just down from there, there's a whole parking lot that is associated just with the beach area.
Yeah, where you can.
And it was really convenient. It was probably a 10-minute drive from our house in Baynac. Just drive there, park in this huge parking lot, and just go swimming. And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful scenery and all that, and it was a great way to beat the heat. Another way to beat the heat that he suggested is just barbecue. If you're going to cook on hot days, just barbecue outside. And they had a nice barbecue. So I kind of went to the butcher with that in mind and bought a bunch of meats for barbecuing, and half of the week we cooked outside, and that was really cool too. And that was unexpected. Both those things, swimming in the Dordogne and cooking outside, were not something we had planned, but ended up being like some of the highlights of the trip.
You're now pro. You can do it.
Yeah.
Very good. How many days did you stay in the Dordogne?
So we stayed, it was a 7-night rental. So we arrived on Saturday and then left the following Saturday morning.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And how did you find out about this canoeing? Was it mostly the landlord that told you, or did you?
Yeah, I knew this was something that we wanted to do, but I didn't know the specifics. And they said, yeah, this is the place to rent it from. And I had questions because I wasn't sure if a 5-year-old would be able to go.
Oh, yeah.
And they said, this place rents to 5-year-olds. It's no problem. And
yeah.
So.
Yeah. There were probably other 5-year-olds along with you renting.
Oh, yeah. It was perfectly safe.
Yeah.
Slow current and shallow water.
Exactly. It's not, they wouldn't do that if it was dangerous. These are no rapids or anything like that.
No.
So then you also went to Lascaux? Sorry, sounds like you wanted to add something.
No, that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, we went to Lascaux, which was absolutely blew me away. It was awesome.
Yeah.
You just kind of pretend that it's not a reproduction.
Yeah.
and it's amazing. And then we had the English tour. And this is another example of like things not being crowded, because I had read that, it could be a bit of a rigmarole to get your tickets and get scheduled and everything. But we just went right into the town where you buy the tickets and got the next tour and went there, and it was no issues.
That was lucky. But that was June, right?
Yeah. It was still June, and it was I think we got there at like 9 a.m. or so, so it was early in the day too.
Yeah, that's a good trick. If you're gonna go someplace that everybody's heard of, go first thing in the morning. It'll be easier.
Yeah, we had chosen Lascaux over kind of the other options because it seemed like, I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce it right, but the Fond du Game.
Fond du
Caves. Game.
Don't know that one.
Yeah. It seemed like that one is more competitive to get into, and I said, well, I don't want to stay online for hours with the kids. So, is that
a new reproduction of Lascaux Caves?
No, it's a totally separate cave painting.
Huh.
Yeah.
Don't know that one.
Yeah. So I loved Lascaux. I thought it was fantastic. The kids seemed to like it too. I think it was just a great time.
Yeah. And then you also went.
So then.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So then after that, we went to the Rock of St. Christopher.
Yep.
And another funny story there, when we got there and then we picnicked immediately, and again there was another big field trip there, which I figured probably like 3rd to 5th graders, maybe like 8-9-year-old kids. And what kind of blew us away is there was like, hundreds of kids. And then there was a table that was obviously the chaperones, whether it's teachers or parent volunteers, et cetera. But it was clearly that they were in charge of the kids. And their lunch looked incredible. They had casseroles and fried potatoes, and they had bottles of wine on the table.
Oh, sure.
And I was like, wow, this is like nothing you would see in the States.
Hey, there's no reason why you have to eat poorly just because you're on a picnic. That sounds good to me.
Yeah, so we got a kick out of that.
That's great. Yeah, and it would not be frowned upon for teachers to share a bottle of wine if it's lunchtime. You can have wine. It's normal. Yeah. And then so how was the Rock?
It was cool.
Yeah?
It was totally weird. And it's kind of a reproduction of how people lived not too long ago in these cave overhanging type structures. The kids loved it. It was really cool, actually.
I need to go. I haven't been to that one. So that's La Roque Saint-Christophe. It's definitely one that I need to drive up there and see it for myself and take some pictures. But the next thing you went to, Gouffre de Padirac et Forêt des Singes. I have totally been to those, and a few times even. So why don't you tell us about those?
So that day was probably one of the best, if not the best days of the whole trip. Aside from being like 105 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
The cave, I'm going to call it the Padirac Cave because I can't pronounce it.
Padirac, le Gouffre de Padirac.
Gouffre, okay. It was really cool. And so what it is you drive for a while through this really rural area. It took us a while to get there. And then you get to this massive parking lot, which is pretty much empty.
Yeah.
And we went in and you get into a boat and they, ride you through these underground caves in the water, and the whole thing it takes a while. It's a good tour of the caves, and it's absolutely spectacular.
Yes, it's beautiful. That's I with my parents, even as a kid, we went several times. It's just a beautiful place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just all loved it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and there are, I mean, you have to go up and down some stairs, but there's elevators as well, so it's not too strenuous. I mean, you know.
Mm-hmm. That was just the perfect example of something that, like, all four of us enjoyed, like, on our own terms. It wasn't like, oh, we're doing this for the kids or we're doing this for us.
Oh yeah.
It was just amazingly beautiful, and it was just such a cool experience to be in a boat going through this.
Yeah. And then the Forêt des Singes obviously is more fun for the kids, I suppose. I don't know.
Well, my wife is actually a pretty big fan of Japanese snow monkeys.
Okay.
So she was the one who identified this when we were putting the trip together, because I was like, oh, I think we want to spend a week in the Dordogne. So she started doing some research. She's like, there's a monkey forest.
Yes.
We have to go see that. So she was really the driver for going to that. And, you know, we all loved it. It was really cool. It was, again, not something that you would really see in the States.
That's true.
Which is interesting.
That's true.
Go in, feed the monkeys, and don't do anything dumb.
Yes.
Basically, for the instructions.
You have to be a little bit careful, because if you give them, because they give you a fairly small bag of popcorn, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And they really don't want you to give them anything else, because they have developed a taste for other goodies, and tourists always sneak in other goodies, and if you have anything else, they will get aggressive, because they'll start competing for who gets the better stuff, and you might get hurt in the process. So when you go, just give them the plain old popcorn.
Yeah.
And then nobody gets hurt. Yeah.
It was cool. It was so the instructions are basically you put the popcorn in the palm of your hand, you extend your arm, and they take it. But my 9-year-old daughter, Alice, was getting nervous sometimes. So as soon as the monkey would, like, reach for the thing, she'd pull her hand back. And I was like, oh, don't do that. You don't want to aggravate the monkey.
Yeah. You have to let them take it. And did you get to see some babies?
Yep.
There were babies around. Oh, that's good. Yeah, the babies make it better even. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really
Yeah. Then you went to Castelnau-la-Chapelle and Dôme.
That's right.
So tell me about those.
Yeah, so Dôme was okay. It was market day. We did the market there. It's very beautiful, the overlook. But again, the kids get restless because it's like we're just walking around the town. Yeah. So they said, let's get on with it. Castelnau was very exciting. It was cool to see, like, a catapult demonstration.
Yes.
A lot of these things I never actually even thought about. Like, I was like, there's catapults, and there were catapults in the world, but I never really thought about how it actually works.
Yeah, seeing it is cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of physics involved in the whole thing that I just never really appreciated.
Yeah, if you wanted to get all sciencey with your kids, you could totally, explain a lot. So, that's... Yeah. And so every night you would go back to the same rental.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for the whole week, you just explored around. And did it feel like it was a problem to have to drive back to the same gîte?
No, not at all. In each week we tried to set it up so the home is centrally located to minimize the drive. But no, it was just like going home, and the Dordogne is amazing because there's so many things to do in such a concentrated geographic area.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't an issue at all.
Yeah, and the Dordogne is one place in France where they really value the tourism. And by that I mean it's an attitude. They really want to make it pleasant and beautiful for people. So, I live in France, so I'm always driving through little villages, going to basketball games, whatever, in towns that never see any tourists. And those are the kind of places where people don't care. They just put out their garbage, and if a dog tears into it, so what? They don't care. But in the Dordogne, not like that. First of all, you will never see garbage in the road, because they build these kind of wooden shelters so it's not an eyesore. And they are very careful. They put signs everywhere. They're very accommodating for the tourists.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an outstanding place to visit. Well, we're almost done. We've been talking almost an hour, so let's finish up your visits of Dordogne, and then I think we're going to have to call it a day for today, Matt, because this episode is going to get too long otherwise. So I'll just have to call you back for the second one. But
okay.
It sounds like you had some duck in Dordogne, which makes sense. That's what I do when I'm in Dordogne. Mm-hmm. How did you like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we liked it. We bought some duck confit legs from the butcher, and my wife cooked them up, and it was delicious. So pretty much.
Who does the cooking? Was it mostly your wife that does the cooking in your family?
On this trip, yeah. In our typical daily lives, I think it's close to a 50-50 split. But on this trip, she did most of the cooking.
Yeah.
So she took on the duck legs for the first time, and they were great. And one of the things that we found that was kind of exceptional was just the pork everywhere.
Yeah.
Every time we went to the butcher and bought pork, it was unbelievably good.
Yeah.
Like noticeably better than what we're used to.
Pork is really good in France, and unlike beef, which I would say is usually not very good, and it's also inexpensive for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And you eat sausages, all sorts of sausages. It seems like every area has its own variation on the sausage stuff.
Yeah, and I think we tried them all. Especially, we had a lot of Toulouse sausages in that week in Dordogne, which I thought were great.
Yes, the saucisse de Toulouse is definitely a favorite of mine.
Yeah, and some pork ribs and the duck legs, and we ate well.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so one last thing: is there a place in the Dordogne or in the Loire that your kids enjoyed particularly much that you want to make sure we don't miss?
I'd say the Padarac cave and Chenonceau.
Yeah.
Of everything we've talked about so far, I'd say those were the two favorites among the kids.
Excellent.
Probably the monkey forest too.
Yeah, the monkey forest is fun.
So, I do have to say, like at this point in the trip, the kids loved everything that we did. The castles were great. I don't want to make it sound like they didn't like the castles or the canoeing. They did very much. But I felt like the boat cave was just exceptional.
So do you do a lot of sports activities with your kids in the U.S.? I mean, are they used to going canoeing and all that?
No, not really. I mean, we go for nature walks or hikes as much as we can. But this is the first time they've ever been canoeing, actually.
Yeah.
So it was pretty fun because they were just kind of paddling as hard as they could and sending us off in different directions and things. Yeah,
kids can. I mean, canoes are hard. It's not easy if you're not very good at it. It's super hard to get anywhere. Mm-hmm. But it's gentle current. It's easy, even if you're not like buff. And we have friends in Canada who do a lot of canoeing, and they go on purpose to places that are challenging and difficult. And of course, they can get through anything. But this is nothing like this. This is like easygoing canoeing, not
lazy river tourism.
Exactly. That's a good term for it. All right. Well, I think we're going to end it there for part one of your trip report, but we'll definitely do a part two because it sounds fascinating. So I have to tell you, the first question I'm going to ask you for part two is, so you went through Toulouse to get to Provence, because it's really hard not to, but you didn't stop.
All right, for the next episode.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. It's been lovely talking to you.
You too.
All
thanks.
right, bye.
This brings us to the end of another Join Us in France travel podcast. You can leave a comment on the website, follow us on Facebook, or look for @ParisPodcast on Twitter. I put lots of information on Facebook and Twitter that never makes it into the shows. And also, this is a subliminal message. Join the mailing list. Now, today. You can do that on joinusinfriends.com. Look for the green button. Et c'est tout pour aujourd'hui.